I had experiences that I cannot fully explain. That like I have theories what happened to me, but I don't know if it's considered paranormal or not. So one of the episodes I had that I went to, it was a couple of years ago when I went to uh, New England trip through the whole new every state, one state per day. And I remember we stayed in a small town called Mystic in Connecticut. And we stayed in an inn that is supposedly haunted. Um, and I remember that I woke up in the middle of the night because I saw like a flash of light in my room. Like someone took a picture with an old camera or something. I thought that maybe I imagined that because that was exactly the moment when I woke up, and it was, my eyes were closed, but it felt like the room just illuminated for a split second, like the entire room. And my wife was there; she was asleep. Sometimes it happens when your phone starts to ring or something in the middle of the night, but it wasn't the case because it was turned the other way. Um, so I went to bathroom and I came back. And as I t like sat on the bed again, it just happened again. Well, my eyes were open this time, and the whole room just illuminated, and now I saw it like for sure. Yeah, like there was some kind of a source of light in the room that I couldn't even see. Like it didn't look like the lights went on for a second, or it wasn't a phone, or it wasn't something from the outside, not from the window. So yeah, for a split second, just the whole room, as someone took a picture of me, just illuminated. And to this day, I cannot explain this. Um, I was telling this story to my wife, and we were like trying to rationalize this, intellectualize this experience, but we failed. Like one of my theories was that it has to do something with the synthetic blankets there, and when you rub them against each other, it may actually make a spark that may illuminate the room. But that sounds crazy. Yeah, it was really, really bright. So it's hard to tell what it was. All episodes like this that I couldn't really explain. They're not like I've seen a ghost or something in a traditional sense of this word, but I certainly have some stuff that I cannot like fully explain. And it'd be naive to think that we understand the world fully as such limited creatures as human beings. It's to me, it seems like there's so many things we cannot perceive. So I always assume that I'm surrounded by ghosts, whatever that is. Yeah, and I think sleep paralysis is one of those windows to different worlds. Because I had one episode just 2 days ago, first time in a very, very, very long time. Just posted this Aether Instagram post with me, and it happened on the night in the night the next day. But I remember that I couldn't open my eyes again. I couldn't really breathe. I remember hearing myself, like hearing my own labored breathing. And it felt like somebody leaned over me and was blowing into my ear. For some reason, I was sure in this weird state of mind, I was sure that it's somebody who's very hostile to me. And even though it's just a tickling sensation, I felt like it may turn into something else. I had this like weird feeling that yeah, the creature is hostile basically. But yeah, it was brief. It was brief, and I haven't had it in a very very long time, maybe 3 years for now. And for some reason, one of the thoughts I remember having in this moment that it was my neighbor, like one of the neighbors in the building where I live. I don't know why and who exactly that was, but for some reason I was like, oh, that's a neighbor coming, like, and he's hostile toward me, and he started blowing into my ear. Like it didn't make any sense, but that's like a chain of thoughts weird,
Right.
yeah, like a dream logic, I guess, that is unexplainable and hard to rationalize. I feel like a horror filmmaker should experience episodes like this. Yeah, and I think whoever is ready to embark on this journey, it's also hard to rationalize this choice. It's maybe it has something to do with a sense of guilt, or maybe like we're very weird creatures, human beings, forever drawn to self-destruction. So maybe that it has to do something with that. But Katabasis is the movie about miners, and essentially about a female miner. Um, and I've done my homework. I've been doing a lot of research on miners, female miners of the world they live in. And I remember this one thing that stuck with me. Um, One of the female miners was interviewed, Soviet female miner, and she was asked like, how do you deal with this constant harassment from your colleagues? Like, why are you going? Like, how do you deal with this fear that accompanies your everyday life, the danger you're constantly in? Why do you do that? And she answered that she doesn't know. Like pilots are drawn to the sky, like sailors drawn to the sea. She's drawn to underground, and I think that that is what people who are ready to go underground are. They just do not try to rationalize this. They just do it. And I think it's really hard to explain this in words, but this story could be told through art. Um, you know, some people are asking me like, why is your protagonist female? Like, why is she a woman surrounded by men? First of all, I've been raised by women. My grandmother, my mother, my aunt too. I've been studying habits of their mind, like the way they interact with reality, and also their difficult and often unhealthy relationship with the world of man. And when I'm talking about the world of man, I'm not talking about just with their fathers or husbands or sons and grandchildren, but also this Soviet brutal totalitarian system where they grew up. And what was fascinating for me is that how they converted all those struggles into unconditional love, um, toward me, my father, my grandfather, toward men. Um, it's really inspiring. And now when I'm separated by war with these women, um, I'm thinking that um, their strength like paradoxically, it lies in accepting their own vulnerability. They're going through struggles, and then they have this chance to ascend. Basically, this is what Katabasis for me is. I mean, I'm the one who's riding a like riding a horror tree on in the shadow of a Californian palm tree. I'm living in the comfort while they are staying there in Ukraine. And they are the one who's inspiring me and supporting me somehow from there. Um, yeah, and it's really, and I kind of converted this into a metaphor of a woman miner and told this story through from this perspective. Because I think that the very choice of her trade, of my protagonist's trade, makes her like architecture of her soul an enigma that is very fascinating, that is very interesting to decode and decipher, and to understand what Katabasis is, why people choosing this act of self-sacrifice, um, in hope to achieve something, going through hell, basically. It's a very common myth that I think rooted in every story being told. Like it's just the same story of transformation, of going through struggles and becoming something else or not becoming something else. There are tragic versions of these stories where just heroes go through hell and then they fail to come to any self-realization, and they just fall into the morass of their own misconceptions and drag everyone along with them. There's just another way to tell this story, but they're essentially all the same. I'm always trying to negotiate. I'm trying to tell them that they have every opportunity to leave. But what the paradox is that all men in my family left the country, but while most of the women in my wife's family, they stay there and they don't want to leave. They have opportunities too, but they just say that I leave my entire life here. Like my grandmother is asking who's gonna bring flowers to our grandfather's grave. She's just she doesn't want to leave. This harsh reality of underground mining is just an allegory for that journey. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't lie. I would lie if I say that I believe that what I went through in this episode is the way that death would feel like. I don't necessarily believe that. It was just a trick of my mind, I guess, some kind of a trick um, that 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 created an illusion for me to go through a certain experience that helped me realize things. And I didn't even process them intellectually. It's just something that I um, emerged from it and it just had it inside of me. Um, so it's I would say it's some kind of a gift that I received from my own mind that helped me to cope with it. Before that, I was paralyzed by fear. I couldn't create anything. I couldn't do anything. I was, um, yeah, I'd call it depression, though I never diagnosed with any, um, like real thing. Like I haven't diagnosed with depression, but I think that what it was. I was thinking a lot about death. I was obsessed with death, thoughts about it. Um, and then after, I just realized that fears and struggles that could be converted into other emotions through art. To me, art is just a tool to shape your own emotions into something material. And I think that that's exactly what I've started to do. I think that the most powerful stories being told are the ones that you experienced yourself. So before that, I was trying to write from a perspective of someone that I thought is interesting. While after I overcame the fear of death, kind of, it was all about me and me only. Just I was applying different settings on it, different ideas, and like Daniel says, different skins to your characters. Essentially, you're telling the same story that is essential to your own life, but you just apply different um, settings, ideas, and experiences to this. So basically, I understood how to create stories that come from within you, other than from the outside world. I just assumed that there is an infinite possibilities that it's not the end, that the death is not the end, and tragedy is not the end. And it's enough for me to keep going and to feel better. Yeah, because when my grandfather died, my sense of reality began to fall apart too. Um, and I remember the funerals; it made it even worse. It was such a strange, traumatic ritual for me. Like a body is put on display that bears almost no resemblance to the person you loved, and you're expected to interact with it and to kind of say goodbye, to pretend you believe that this body is still your grandfather. I think that was kind of made some damage to my soul as this kind of experience. And then I began reading a lot, like obsessively, almost desperately, religious texts, like philosophical treatises, popular science book, like searching for answers. about existence, about life and death, but none of it like helped. It wasn't enough to ease the suffering of my soul. And then eventually I came to this idea that fascinated me. Like reading about all these things about existence is useful, but the real answers to our tormenting questions, like not in what those texts say, but what they leave unsaid, in the gaps they leave behind. It's like information was almost making me weaker, while unknown and uncertainty leaves room for hope. It's I realized that believing that some kind of a tejas philosopher can answer all your questions is naive, but you know, peace comes only when you grasp that no matter how intellectually gifted a person may be, their perception of reality is just limited. Is just painfully limited, and the universe, its map of meanings and mechanisms of just how it works, it literally infinite. So, which means it offers an infinite number of chances that any tragedy and even death itself, it might not be the end. That's what makes me personally feel better. Those answers will never be like fully understood or revealed to us, but they exist, and like denying that would mean denying the existence of infinity itself. It's like some people deny God, but even those people may come to terms with an idea that there are infinite possibilities that God may exist. And I think it's enough. It's enough to um, overcome the worst struggles. That's why I believe in miracles. And I urge those who are struggling to believe in them too. Like the universe holds enough mysteries for each of us to choose one in which hope resides. Coming back to the sleep paralysis episode I experienced, I think that at one point, after all those chaotic thoughts were circling through my mind for the first 10 to 20 seconds, I kind of surrendered, and I felt it such a relief that I never felt in my entire life. It's like, okay, if that's the end and my body does not exist anymore and I'll be surrounded by infinite darkness forever, I mean, that's fine. I can still think, I can still feel something. Um, that was enough for me. To me, like ceasing to exist means to fall asleep, uh, like you not having any dreams and never wake up, and that's like terrifying. Um, but it's like losing your ability to experience the world around you. Um, and I love life. I love experiencing life. I love smelling things. I love small things, moments, and just it letting this go is like very terrifying to me. The idea of not being able to experience anymore anything, but also it just accepting that you will have to at some point, mm, is freeing. And when I'm thinking about what a person feels at the very last moments of their life, I think they kind of they probably let everything go at the very last moments if they kind of um, comprehend that they're dying. Maybe there are moments that mm, when they let go everything they had in their lives, they just embark on this journey into the infinite unknown. And I think that just accepting the fact that it will happen at some point could make your life uh, richer, fuller, in a sense. It makes you experience every moment of your life. Um, like like keeping in mind that there are a limited amount of time you have. I think it's just mm, terrifying, but also very helpful to experience the reality around us. I think it's hard to fully accept the fact that we're all mortals, but I think our strengths lie in this acceptance. And as soon as you be able to come to terms with your own mortality and your own vulnerability in the face of infinite unknown, um, the most out of your life you'll be making. I think that's why it's so difficult to answer this question properly, because it's really hard to rationalize this process of transformation. And I think the most powerful stories we tell, they are not conventionally structured as something that you can easily explain on a page or for the viewer or general audience. I think the most beautiful stories um, they're not being told on an intellectual level. They're told on emotional level, where you cannot explain a protagonist's decision, but you can feel that it's the right one. Is the right one. That's yeah. It a lot a lot of struggles are coming out when you're trying to tell this kind of story, where um, your protagonist's soul could feel like a cipher. You cannot fully understand what she's or he's doing and why he's doing this. Um, and there are producers, there are infinite amount of people that get used to certain conventional patterns, and they keep asking you questions that you cannot really answer unless you start talking with them about philosophy, about all these ideas we're discussing right now. And that's why I think it's so hard to make a movie in Hollywood that is intellectually and emotionally stimulating. And as someone who get used to explain everything in my own head, um, this kind of contradicts with my like usual way to perceive reality. So first of all, I feel like it's not really a dialogue. I just receiving signals that I somehow have to convert and explain to myself. And sometimes I fail to do this. So I feel helpless. This is the first thing. And then I feel smaller as a human being. It helps me overcome my own ego when I understand that there are so many things that I do not understand. And it's really freeing to accept that there is so much that the human being um, cannot like experience or explain. Um, that's why that's the source of the hope, I think. The fact that I feel like I'm not the center of the universe, and that's very helpful. I think that's the source of empathy towards other people, when you understand that they're also vulnerable to whatever is waiting for them on the other side. They're very limited, all limited as human beings. And I think only good things come from realizing that there's so many things we cannot explain. But I remember that something that happened to my friend when we stayed at um, our like my country house. We were alone in the big house in different rooms, and I remember him screaming. And he keeps telling his stories. He's even considering sending this story to the next Ghost Slam that is happening in PRS soon. And what he says is that he saw a a woman like a ghost in a traditional sense, just standing, leaning um, over him in the middle of the night. That's why he was screaming. And it was when we were 17, 18-year old. That's like my childhood friend. Um, and what's interesting to me is that I believe him because she's so skeptical about everything paranormal and explain that even cynical, and then this story comes out of nowhere. Like his personality just doesn't strike me as someone who can just come up with something like this for no reason, just to entertain himself. I don't know what could be the reason. So I assume that he experienced something that we both cannot explain. And I tend to believe that what he saw was truth. I don't know if it was a trick of his mind or it was really something present in the room, but I believe that he saw what he saw. I think like Eastern European culture is rooted into Orthodox Christianity, and I think all our moral values are kind of based on Christian values. Mm, my family has never been religious, but I always treated religion with respect because I think that it's a very good source of mm, contemporary morality. Um, and I think there are a lot of fascinating stories told through Bible. One of the other movies I'm writing is loosely based on Cain and Abel's story about two brothers, but told through a story about two sisters. Um, and I just think that like Bible has so much in it, like source materials that you can just apply your own experiences on, and understand human being better. Like it's not the fact that it was written mental for understanding what a human being is. Um, so yeah, I think all the stories I'm telling are loosely based on some biblical stories. I'm sure that you can find some equivalents of whatever I'm interested in, even unconsciously. You can always find them in religious text or uh, philosophical text. I wouldn't describe myself as an atheist. I think atheist is just the one who doesn't believe in anything. I think it's being atheist is on the verge of being nihilist. It's and I think nihilism is the most destructive power um, that human being ever encountered. It's something that serves as a source of human evilness. Like I think school shooters are essentially like the quintessential of nihilism. And I'm really trying to go a different direction. Nihilism is very infective and very dangerous, and atheism is like the last step before you stop believing in anything. So atheists are someone who tried to rationalize everything. And I accepted the fact that there's so many things that just refuse to be rationalized. And that's what giving me comfort and make myself feel better. So I'm not an atheist. I know there's some terms like agnostic and different ideologies that might fit to, mosaic of what my soul is. But I wouldn't describe myself as anyone. I try to be free from ideologies. I don't like them. That's why I do exactly the opposite. I always infuse whatever organism I develop with magical realism, with myths, with mysticism, with everything that is fascinating to me that I cannot explain. It's just my movies are not answers; they're questions. And to me, like the most powerful stories is when they pose a question and unite people in a universal attempt to answer this question. It's not giving your own perspective that is so limited to your own experiences that um that's not what I want to do. I don't feel like I have the moral right to teach someone, to preach someone about anything. I can only pose the question in the form of allegory, metaphor, art, and hope that it will resonate with the audience, and I'll have a dialogue with the viewer about all those complicated and explainable things. Yeah, I encourage everyone who's listening to this to believe in miracles and just do not assume that you understand everything. That will be naive and very depressing. That's the only answer I found to all existential crises I've experienced in my life. Art is the thing that keeps me going. And when people are, you know, depressed and we somehow end up having this dialogue about their lives and what's happening. What could they do about what they do? I always suggest make art. Try to do art. If you never considered yourself a poet, write a poem. Try to paint a beautiful painting, or make music. Like maybe this will help. Try to convert your emotions through such a powerful tool. Don't ignore it.
Thank you so much to Ivan Nevesenko for his poignant insight once again, and for joining us in the Aether for part 2. I wanted to expand on the idea of Katabasis, which, by the way, was the working title of Ivan's film, though I should note here that it is likely to change. I'm not sure if I mentioned on his earlier episode, I'm sure I did, but when I heard Ivan tell his story 6 months ago at the Philosophical Research Society, I already saw this version of me in the future, being able to speak with him more about his experience and his work, though at the time I really couldn't have known this podcast would even become a reality. This conversation resonated with me on so many levels. The resilience of the feminine spirit and that beautiful, conscious choice to feature women protagonists as an homage to the matriarchs of his family in Ukraine. The artist's willing descent into the unknown. Moving forward under the cover of darkness. The trust in our own inner wayfinder and transmutative power of what we create as adepts. And I agree with Ivan. Miracles are real. We're in one. And I'll also double down on that reminder. Never, ever stop relentlessly and fearlessly creating. On that note, I now affirm the sphere dissolved and the transmission complete. So it is. If you've had a psychic, paranormal, or unexplained experience, you can call or text our listener line, The Void, at 323-332-1190. Follow us on Instagram at EtherPod, and join me at patreon.com/theetherpod. That's TheAetherPod for bonus episodes, guest interviews, ASMR, sound, tarot, and much more. This podcast has been brought to you by SpectreVision Radio. Theme music by Late Life, created, edited, and produced by Nicole Johnstone.